So we have Gabby first here. Gabby, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about the work you have in the exhibition. And I'd also like to just know a little bit about your Rollins career overall, what your major was, where you see yourself staying.
Yes, I'm Kathy Bohol. I'm a senior student major in minor in business management, and my work explores the impact of mental health on the Filipino American community. And I do this through their images and the shadow boxes and through my kinetic piece as well.
Emily?
Hi, my name is McCLave. I'm another senior studio art major. I'm minoring in social entrepreneurship, but I finished that up already. So my pieces deal with childhood nostalgia and the conflict of trauma and memory in landscape. And all of my paintings, all my oil paintings, take place in my backyard back in upstate New York. And my time at Rollins, I've done a lot of different things. I'm a member of DC. I've done immersions. I've tried to be as active on campus as possible. So, yeah.
I'm Kathy Molina. So you're a major I do a lot of mixed media art, and then I base it based on the humanitarian and economic crisis in my birth country. So that I use the currency that has the value for it. So I base it out different ways of process against all the social justice that's happening in my birth country.
And I shared a little bit about this process that you've gone through. It starts with doing your portfolio review. You also have a series of critiques with your peers throughout the year to refine your ideas, to refine your techniques, working processes. And so I'm curious about what that development looks like. So over the course of the year, how did you change? What were some of the big challenges that you faced? Was there a critique that really impacted you in such a way? And Gabby, I'm going to ask that you start again here. Tell us about this process.
At the beginning of my senior year, I knew I wanted to do like some sort of 3D work, but I wasn't really sure what sort of form it should take. But I knew I liked the idea of like layered images and like I was kind of into the idea of like miniatures, but I was more into like that kind of stuff. I know one challenge I faced was this siding, I think, because when in these art classes, you have like a group version, set of rules to follow, but here it's like you kind of have to decide everything on your own and stick with it. And I think one turning point at the beginning of the fall semester, I remember Parker, she recommended I look into like mechanical work and like automata and stuff like that. So that's where like the kinetic work kind of came from, and I just went with that idea.
So throughout my past 3 years in college, I knew that I wanted to do digital art in my senior exhibition. And when I started senior year, I really was still trying to do that, but I studied abroad and I learned how to oil paint and I fell in love with it. So I was trying to figure out how to combine the two, and it just wasn't working. No matter how hard I tried a lot of different things, and it just wasn't. I think that was something that we talked about in critiques a lot. I tried to bring the figure into it, which was I was just biting on more than I could chew, and it was making my work too chaotic. So I think that was kind of a turning point in one of my critiques.
Tell us more about that, because we're finding a couple of the students that are going into this process, like learning to trust yourself and trust the decisions that maybe this is too much.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
I remember Liz telling me the year before, the best piece of advice that she gave me was they're going to tell you to change direction and you're just going to have to jump in and do it. Because I kind of went into it stubborn and like, I don't want to change direction. Like, I know what I want to do and I'm going to do it. And I never thought that I would completely change direction, and so like the critiques were happening, and I went into critiques with a complete open mind. I think that is like the biggest thing. You can't go in with any expectation. And then just being very receptive to everything that is being said. You know that like the people in critiques are there to help you. So just listen to them. But you also can like take your own liberty with certain things. I definitely did, but I did change direction, and it was for the better. So.
And I have a slide up here with your process. You started with digital images, though, so you were able to incorporate that digital practice from moving into right, painting. So, all right. Kathy, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing on the slide, too? This is the money that you're referring to.
And so my process kind of changed throughout the year. I first started like with your for like other country culture because I'm so curious about like other countries and stuff like that. And I love change during summer. I love change during the political views in my country. So kind of like wanted to base it on that, and my art kind of transformed into this political art. It's like my way to like talk about all the injustices that's happening in my country, and that's how kind of like first started to see what can I do. And then I don't know, I just think about all the money and like, all this stuff that I used to see when I was over there, when I still live over there. And it has a value. I was like so curious about it, and I was wondering where can I find it. Like I was asked like family members to see if like I can like get some money. And I noticed that I could get a stack of them on eBay, which is kind of sad. But then I wanted to like do something with it, and I first started to like see what can I do with that and want to actually pay in the money. And I think that's something that happened during one of my critiques. But I think somebody suggested it, and I kind of just went with it and see what can I do. So I usually work in big canvases, and working something small was kind of like a challenge for me. So you know how like how to utilize that small space for me to show what I want to do.
So you took this motif of the money, and you were blowing it up and doing much larger pieces, and now we have in the gallery this framed piece with actual paintings on the money itself. And so talk to me a little bit more about that scaling up and then scaling back down to the physical property. You said you were very sensitive to working with the actual physical properties of the money and doing that type of piece. Talk a little bit more about scale.
So I first wanted to show the iconography from the money because it had a lot of like information based on my country. Like I want to show people like how like some of the animals, some of the history that is based in the country that actually shows in the field. And I wanted to blow it up and see what I can do with it in big canvases. But then I wanted to critique to get to that work in the money. So I kind of like wanted to see what can I do in such little space that will show how, like, it show like my way to express myself based on my label views. And it was kind of difficult to work small because I got so used to working big, and then working small was something that I was kind of afraid to like go into it, but I kind of like, took my time with it. And I specifically selected specific fields that were the ones that I saw growing up, and I went by the year that I had to be a little bit tiny and on the side, so I went by the year. And each year is based on like something that happened, like transform, like in all the injustices that's happening in the country. So I kind of like went like to search how can I portray each year what specifically happened that I can show in this film.
There's a real sensitivity. I remember looking at your larger pieces and the critiques, and this real shift from almost a history painting size to really right? That makes sense. Scale, and then working at this kind of small, intimate scale. it is a different kind of booking process. It happens for me when I go to Gabby's little room with all of these lit sculptures as well. This very intimate process of looking and interacting with such a kinetic piece. I'm curious about your relationship to the viewer and how your understanding of the viewer changed throughout the year, throughout this process. And that can be either
I mean, I think from the beginning of the year, I kind of wanted the viewers to sort of enter a sort of space, whether it was like physical or like mental or something. And I think with the layered images and like the lit up box, it makes people sort of have to like physically look closer to the work to see more detail, I guess. And with the kinetic piece, like you could also like kind of work with it.
Since I when I'm at the sports day, I wanted to be more into the face in a sense, and now since it's so small, I want people to be able to be curious, to be closer. It's so small, I want to get let's see everything we feel.
Okay, so we'll be much more intentional type of
Yeah, I was gonna say, for mine, I want the viewer to kind of get sucked into it. I want it to feel very nostalgic and it to feel like they're going back to like a memory, like being sucked into a memory. And I messed around with different sizes. I have a 30 by 30 and then I have like two 12 by 12. So I wanted it to feel like it was being hung in like a family home. So I wanted it to be able to be approachable that way so that it was more recognizable.
And I think all three of you share this kind of interest in narrative realities. What are the types of political situations that we inherit generation from generation, or in a very personal sense, this is a family home, this is land that's been in your family for generations. And so this idea of inheritance kind of comes through. Also, again, I think the light, the way we were talking about Filipino mental health and issues specific to that community, and I'm curious what your relation, if you could just expand a little bit more about how you came to this area of interest and how you are using the properties of light to metaphorically, but quite literally also illuminate this major issue. Could you talk a little bit about
that? Yeah, I thought that the choice of light as a medium was really interesting. I feel like it can be kind of tough to work with sometimes, like you can't control it sometimes, but I also liked the way that the light kind of interacted with what I was using, and I also think that sort of like soft, warm light that I had kind of related or like reminiscent of childhood or nostalgia, and I think it kind of relates to like the themes of my work. I'm thinking about into the past of myself or others or people in my community and see how patterns keep reoccurring.
Could you want to talk a little bit about the titles as well for your works, which are a really important entry point for all works of art, but especially yours? Help point us towards some of these issues that you're grappling with. Maybe a little bit more about back to the actual works, how you title them.
Yeah, so I wanted to have both English and Tagalog titles to kind of talk about the, I guess, the sort of barrier between like older generations and new generations and the loss of language. Some of the works were translated in English because there was like a more clear translation, but one of them by Anaconda is not translated in English because I couldn't really find a good way to translate it correctly without saying like a whole paragraph or something, but it's basically like the idea of community and working together.
What were the titles of which, the kinetic piece? Can you remind us of what that title was?
The kinetic piece is we strive for excellence, in English, but I thought that I wanted that in English before developed because I think the English language is like sometimes seen in the community as something above developed, like it's seen as more refined in a way. Like, yeah, in the Filipino community, it's like sometimes English is seen as like, and like the West in general is seen as like you're more educated in a way, and to strive for excellence, you go through education, you go and succeed. That way, it seems like that's the only way to some communities.
So you're grappling with that issue and its impacts on mental health and people's perceptions of identity of themselves. And being very deliberate about this interplay of language, because it's a really interesting way of going about it. And for this kind of sensitivity to light. Well, I like this idea of illumination for all three of you. And I mean, light is quite literally such an important element to your paintings that you're working with. And you said you did some plein air, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience abroad too?
Yes.
How that sensitivity of light that comes through the practice of plein air painting has influenced this body of work too. I'd love to know more.
Yeah, so I did plein air paintings for the first time when I studied abroad in Aix-en-Provence. And it was really challenging, but it was really eye-opening to me. A lot of the time, we only had like an hour to mix all the paintings, or all the paint, and then do the actual painting, because we had to take a bus up to the countryside, and like pack it all up and get ready. So it forced me to learn how to act quickly, and also light changes all the time. It never stays the same. So you have to act very quickly, especially on like a cloudy day. And the wind and capturing all of that. So that taught me, I did a lot of exercises where I would, instead of trying to paint to make a pretty painting, I would just mix all of the colors that I could see, and then the first color I would see when I looked up, I would just put a brush stroke down, like one brush stroke, and it kind of looks like a pixelated piece by the end, but it helps me to kind of map out everything and like see like the light and the colors, because not everything is just going to be like green, blue, brown, like there's a lot of different colors in there, so I really wanted to kind of try to incorporate that into my pieces. My pieces hanging in the museum aren't necessarily plein air, but I did take a lot of the methods that I used from plein air painting and put it into that.
So then you've gone from plein air painting to working from reference photos again. What were some of the challenges there? So I do remember going over winter break, taking a ton of photographs.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Probably just like the staticness of it. Like there's no movement. And the movement, I didn't realize how much I missed it until I didn't have it, but in a way that was also kind of what I wanted to translate into my paintings. I wanted it to be representative of how there's no movement for me back at home, in my childhood home. So it worked out, but yeah, I mean, the changing of everything, of the trees and the wind and the clouds is so important in the light. And just having like photographs kind of forced me to slow down in a way that was interesting and reflective.
The relationship from the plein air painting change your relationship to photography?
I think so. Because I would try to approach photography like I would approach a painting a little bit, in the way that I wanted it framed and how I wanted the lighting to be. And I would take several pictures so that I had different versions that might be representative of different things. And then I would also go back in, and before I would digitally paint it, I would edit it in like Photoshop, and mess around with like filters and different like changing like the contrast and brightness. So I think that influenced photography.
So this seems to be like also again this metaphor of illumination and political urgency. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the political situation in Venezuela and how you are using your platform, Kathy, as an artist to shed light on some of these issues and thoughtful of the context in which you're showing it? What does your work do here? How would it maybe act differently in Venezuela? Back in your shown back in your home country, different reactions to
I feel like there's a lot of artists that are in Venezuela that still use their art as a way of protest against the economic crisis and the humanitarian crisis. And it's kind of scary because they're putting their work out and also like they're trying to show the world that this is happening, this is where I live, and this is like my situation. And it's kind of hard because of there's no really freedom of speech in there. So it kind of put their life integrity. So for me trying it here, I feel like this is my way to like kind of have like I'm out, but also like I want to be part of this movement, or like be part of how it should be my first country in a sense. A lot of the memories I gathered so I can make my photograph are based on all the situations that happened when I was a kid and all the experiences that I don't think anybody here will understand how, like, as a kid, you see it and that was your normal. And now here, you see them, it's not like, oh, it's like kind of all that. There's no light, there's no electricity, it's kind of all that. There's no running water. So it's kind of like, for me, it was my reality, so I had to, like, if I'm for me, I have to show it.
and what should we say in memory and processing some of these memories while you were, did you think about this while you were creating, and was the studio a place of, I don't know, what is that like healthy distance that you have to keep to some of these major issues, these more difficult memories, and you balance your mental health? I think, again, sensitive to the fact that we do have students going into this process, it is an intense process. Is there advice that you would give to them? Because all three of you are dealing with memory, all three of you are dealing with these really sensitive issues of identity. And so as you're working through that in the studio, it's a form of research, but it's also a form of maybe not trauma-informed counseling in some ways. I can see the art therapeutic, maybe there we go, art therapeutic effect that could happen. And so maybe just a little bit about how you balance mental health throughout this process. Since you brought up memory.
I think this space in the studio kind of like helped me have like a quiet space to think about all the stuff I want to show. Since obviously I have a lot of experiences that I would like to show in my pieces, but I have to be very selective and also I have to think about my audience because sometimes my memories can come across as like really strong and I don't really want them to feel like I'm attacking them because like I don't want them to be like, oh, this is like put it out there in a sense that for them to feel nervous to get close to it. I don't know. But I feel like this space kind of like I can just sit there and then I can think about all the stuff that I can do and then all the stuff that I can like it's like trial and error as well, like think about all the stuff that I want to do also like I was wanting to try it and see the feedback from the faculty and the peers as well kind of help me mentally as well. Because I will take we all creative, so we all have like a lot of approach, different approach to it. So I feel like having also somebody else like tell me, oh, you can like do this or you do something different with the money, or you can experiment with something else. Maybe that also brings a lot of like the creativity in me and trying to see like I can just don't make it all negative, just trying to think of the positive and trying to think like I can show that in a sense like I want to show all of my memories in a kind of like
No, yeah, I love this. I think this freedom that you've been able to achieve, and also thoughtful of what you said earlier, this like ability to speak out in this way, is because you are able to have that freedom of speech here that you wouldn't have back home. And so you're using this platform in a way that educates, changes us, that gets us to think differently perhaps about the political situation and what we heard about political situation. I remember walking into the first critique, seeing your work right after the presidential elections, and there was just so much happening in Venezuela. And so this was a way of processing some of that. And with your urgency, there's an urgency to the message that you were trying to share here.
yeah, I feel like all my it was something really personal to me, and I feel like I need to be able to show all these like my feelings about it. Like I still have fun over there, thinking about them every single day. So I feel like I just wanted to be able to speak out and be able to show like I might be out of there, but I'm still thinking about it.
Right. Leads nicely, actually, back to Emily here, this idea of you're proud of it, you go back home, you do, but this idea of grappling with some of these more sensitive issues. Can you talk a little bit about that? And your painting practice, is there a therapeutic effect? Are you working through things? I know I'm asking for a layer of vulnerability in front of these people that we're having panels, but it's present in the work, it truly is.
Yeah.
So tell me more.
I think in a sense it's confrontational and therapeutic, because it's not anything that I really kind of tried to address before. Yeah, it's always hard going home. I love my family, but it's always been difficult going back home. There's a reason why I'm here and not back in New York. So in a way, it was nice. It's like a full circle moment because now I'm ending my college career. And I have now the ability to make a decision if I want to go back home or if I want to stay, and I'm going to stay. So, and making this artwork really made me feel a lot more confident in that decision. Because I wanted it to kind of be like a closing a little bit, that there is more after. So, and it's not, it helps shape me, but it doesn't necessarily define me. So.
It was this one body of work where you return. I like this idea of closure. I actually just got goosebumps when you were saying that about the sense of autonomy that you have and confidence in your decision after having gone through this rigorous process of creating this particular set of works. We come back to these motifs. So we come back to the landscape of your family's home. And will it be different now that you have this experience of showing the work? Has there been reactions from viewers that will shape the new direction for you?
I definitely think that I want to keep painting this, maybe developing it more or differently, but I want to keep doing the landscapes of my backyard, I want to expand it to also my town. I've had different ideas too of stuff that I want to do. I want to keep doing what I've done here, but also maybe take a more advocacy approach, because a lot of people don't know some of the issues that occur in upstate New York. A lot of people don't even know upstate New York really exists. So I've thought about some of the, like, what I would do about that, maybe incorporating more photography. I don't know, it's been something that I've been thinking about a lot more. But I've had a lot of people come to me who maybe grew up in the Northeast and told me how they can really feel like the coolness and they understand what is being portrayed, which is nice.
We should be able to educate this kind of notion of transformational change that you're hoping to get across through specific experience. There's a universalism to what all three of you are talking about in terms of using your voice for advocacy, educating viewer, creating change. And I want to bring this into our conversation for Gabby. So mental health is the topic of your work, but was your own mental health impacted, or again, there's a layer of vulnerability that I'm asking of you at level of it. But how did your own kind of understanding of these themes change throughout the year? How did you grapple with some of these more challenging topics? What advice would you give to our upcoming seniors in terms of diving into identity?
I would say try to figure out your boundaries, like you in relation to your art first. Because for me, I'm not much of a sharing person. But I think when I decided to do it on the Filipino American community, it made me feel like, it's not just me, like I'm not crazy. It's like everyone's had been affected by it. So that was kind of my boundary. I think also like the making of the artwork was also therapeutic in a way. Like the paper I was using was very delicate, and I really had to be meticulous with it, pay attention, make sure it's not ripping everywhere.
Sense of control over see that. We went through multiple iterations of some of the things that you learned in terms of paper cutting, various techniques and things that you detailed and things. So you are moving on. You will create new work. You've been in this supportive environment, this studio environment, where you have your peers to seek feedback from, you have faculty to seek feedback from, museum staff. How do you maintain that level of community as you move forward, as you graduate across that stage and go into this next chapter? What are the qualities of community that you're looking for? How do you keep it going? It's part of your studio practice, or maybe you just need to do this on your own. Tell me about that too.
I know for me, I want to keep in contact with all of you. You can't see me. So, I think it's important for me to be in contact with other artists and ask for opinions and have kind of scholarly discourse about artwork. I want to keep going to art shows. I want to surround myself with people who are also very influenced by the arts. So I'm definitely going to keep that up. I do work better on my own, but I definitely still need help every once in a while. So keeping in close contact with other artists. Yeah.
Other thoughts about this? Yes.
Like, I didn't have like much of it. Like, I think, sorry, I didn't rephrase that. I had a lot of community engagement here at Rollins. I feel like my final professors are trying for like 2 years ago. So it was definitely a difference between what I was before and what I am now. And I feel like it really helped me a lot to like grow as an artist. And I didn't know, my parents, I'm no artist, I don't have anybody else to talk about art. So I feel like having a lot of people that just be creative all the time really helped me. Yeah.
I think those like-minded individuals and all have gone through this experience together, about this kind of cohort model. Gabby, do you have other thoughts about community?
Yeah, I think personally I do usually also good to have that community so you kind of don't lose yourself in what you're thinking about sometimes and kind of trying to ground yourself. And I think it's important because with this community, I learned so much, and I think I wouldn't have thought a lot of things if there wasn't input from the other seniors or from the faculty.
I mean, again, those like-minded individuals, each of you is such a light in the world. I mean, other people that should carry that light. Going back to that illumination metaphor, I think it'd be so important. Thank you so much for sharing today, too, and just being vulnerable and open. Can we give them a round of applause? I want to open up for questions from the audience. Thoughts, comments, ideas.
First of all, compliments to the three of you. You are wonderful. What you did is very, very moving. It took courage. Great. And I hope to continue this way. Compliments to David for having this wonderful conversation. You cover so many things that I would want to ask questions for, so I need to think about something else, and I did. Actually, it comes back to so many of the questions you asked. My question is, I want to shift the experience and the kind of reflections to the exhibition as a learning moment. All of a sudden, clearly, the enthusiasm, the fear, the palpitations. You must have been watching people watching your work. What went into your mind? You must have received questions that, in a way, challenged you, or maybe, I hope, made you see things that were emerging in you, but they were not quite there. So how does this kind of, I mean, the exhibition is such a strange thing. You know, people, you have the people who have known you for such a long time. You have people who don't know you at all. You have people who love art. You have people who are just curious about it. So how does the, and this will happen to you more and more, how do you think, how are you going to learn to look at the exhibition as a learning moment? Like, does it make sense?
Sorry, does it make sense?
Yeah.
Does anybody want to start off?
I think for me, it's just watching like how people approach the artwork, and learning, yeah, just how they approach it, how they're being sucked into it, if there's adjustments that need to be made in the future. I haven't received any weird questions yet, thankfully. So, but I have had a lot of people come up to me and tell me that I mean, I kind of said this earlier, like they feel the feeling of like the coldness, and they're from the Northeast or from a very snowy climate, so they understand that feeling that I'm trying to convey. I was a little bit worried that there might be some people who have only grown up in Florida, not quite understanding the artwork, and that's still totally fine. But
Is success that for you? Like having somebody from that area look at you and say, "Oh, you got it right." Like that's the like. Oh, okay, tell us about that. What is that feeling like?
validating,
Okay.
very validating, because, I mean, I know other people go through it, but like having someone come up and tell you that like how you perceived it is how they have perceived it is very validating in a sense.
And then Kathy, asking you to piggyback off this. Were there folks from Venezuela? Are there people back home that have seen the work? You know, we're kind of expanding beyond this just physical exhibition, but what you're showing here, have you shared it with others? And reactions? Like, Emily, what was success like for you?
I feel like my parents were really Matteson that have shown our art piece. They really enjoyed it, and my parents and Nana was using a lot of like my memories based on them. So it kind of got curious how somebody that's not from Minnesota like approached me, and a lot of people. I think during this exhibition, and I feel like the conversation I had to like talk to them about how did I want, like how did I want to show how it came to be. It was very interesting to talk about since it had no clue like what's happening or like what is it about exactly. So like, the conversation was very informative and I like for them to be kind of be more curious and more about it as well.
Yeah, so this art's a form of activism too. It can change us, it can shift our perspectives. And it sounds like for people on that side of this, this is more something that's a little bit different than what Emily just said, though, in terms of the sense of validation or the sense of acceptance by people that you know or from this area of you're looking to people not for the sense of really growth and acceptance and change. Gabby? Reactions from people to your work as part of this exhibition process?
Most people that talked to me about it, they told me that they immediately got that sense of like historical kind of bedroom childhood feeling.
Okay.
And I think that's it. That was really what it's good for.
Comfort and
And comfort and
bringing them in through familiarity to this, yes. But you're grappling with major issues. And so there is kind of a subversive quality there. And you react, any other reactions that stand out to you?
Well, I know people told me that when they first came to like the opening, they didn't really have time to like really think about it too much. I feel like that kind of topic is definitely kind of need that like sort of private space or like that sort of mindset because you know, opening reception, there's just so many people, there's so much going on.
It's never about the art. Good wine, right? Yes. Good, it is about the excitement and the energy. You're so right that each of you, I think your work requires a level of concentration. I use this in my course all the time, that the average viewer spends 30 seconds looking at a work of art, and most of that time is spent reading the label, not actually looking. But you required us to slow down. In a world that is so fast-paced, that's quite remarkable. But we should look and linger and give due and far longer than 30 seconds. Your messages, your concepts, your ideas will stick with us. Else in the audience is that yes.
Will you stick around afterwards for additional questions, perhaps? I'm not going to take too much time, but I'll address all three. Gabby, when I first walked into your creation, I didn't read anything. I just walked in at first. And to me, it was very light, good, warm feeling. I mentioned something too, that your work would also be good in children's room. Sort of that before you reading anything. The money, I thought it was the paper money in itself to me throughout the world is very artistic. And for you to add to it, I thought that was very clever. And after the exhibition, will you be using some of the paper tuition? Is that current or that's absolute money?
It has no value at all at the moment. It keeps changing throughout the year. So hopefully at some point maybe, but right now it has absolutely nothing value.
And lots tons of value. So
Right
taking
now.
on that, right? Taking something that is valueless.
Kathy, you had shown 3 pictures. Was one photography from the camera, one was a digital, and the other one was painted?
Yes.
And I would have never known this from New York State, because, or New York, Brooklyn Bridge wasn't there.
Exactly, yeah.
That's actually your backyard?
Yeah. I grew up on 5 acres of land. Not quite from, but that is a pasture. Our neighbors used to have horses on it. Across the way, we have like cornfields. It's very agricultural based, so.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts after installation, whether you guys were cross-pollinating within the exhibition space, your work talks to each other at all? I mean, I know we brought up ideas. What are your thoughts about how the space works and all the different artists, especially you three?
I feel like having a space that we all have something different and also like kind of like showing kind of part of our identity in it as well makes this space I don't know sense. Like I feel like all of us combined have such a unique coming approach about art. So I feel like having that space it just became like a unity.
So that's where your title came from?
Entangled Realities. Other thoughts about the way that things are juxtaposed or curated, changed?
I feel like Kathy did a pretty good job kind of describing it. We all have parts of our identity that we're talking about that other people can relate to. So that makes us similar in that sense, but everyone's dealing with a very different part of identity. So but everything kind of intersects and goes together. So that's kind of how we settled on that name. There was a lot of other names.
Very unique aesthetic sensibilities too. I think that was very clear to me this curation you had even going into it, you refined throughout the year, but you did have a distinct kind of aesthetic voice. Any other final thoughts? One more question. Other questions though from the audience? Maybe one more. Yeah, Emily?
You guys mentioned that you were on a trip and you went out to capture something. Could you also have taken pictures of the different lightings and then later on go back to the creation?
I would have liked to, but we were not allowed to. The whole point of it was to work under time pressure.
When you were abroad.
Yes, yeah, when I was abroad. So I would take pictures, but we wouldn't get any time, like whatever you did during that day was what you did during the day. But we did do a 4-day painting trip in Anastasia, and that was, you had as much time as you wanted. The only guideline was that you had to come back from the trip with 12 completed paintings. So I would spend like 5 hours standing there on one painting and then like 1 hour on 3. And that would be the whole day. And I would come home with 12. So.
Heavily, then the third image is so evocative and so warm. I don't think, yeah, it would be nice to look at it. But it's the difference between the photograph and the painting. It's the painting really draws you in a different way than a photograph does. And it is so more transactional, so more inviting, so more rich. But that's what I would say.
Yeah, I wanted it to be inviting, but at the same time reflective and slightly uncomfortable. The last image is what it looks like because I started painting it actually at home over winter break and then brought it back here. So that's what it looks like when I brought it back here for the start of this semester. So it's definitely changed a little bit, but I still wanted to bring in all of my pieces. There's like a very small sense of warm lighting to kind of be representative of like kind of end of the cycle.
I'm going to close today by asking each of you, you've gone through this process, you are about to graduate, you finished this panel and graduated. But what is the dream that you have yet to realize? Where do we go from here?
First things first, get a job. That'd be nice, but I think I want to look back on advocacy and bringing more advocacy into my artwork now that I've done this and I know how this process looks. So I think a big dream of mine in both social entrepreneurship and art is trying to figure out how to bring advocacy towards like poverty in upstate New York because it's very, very prevalent in food insecurity and things like nutrition and stuff. So I've learned a lot about different methods in art and video art and photography and interviews and gathering data. So I think I would love to.
You wonderful solo artists to learn
Yes.
from. And advocacy and the same addressing social issue.
Yes.
I like it. Okay. Kathy or Gabby?
I feel like after here, I would like to learn more about my photography in a sense, because I use a lot of photography to inspire, to help me with my work. And I think I want to explore more and maybe go more into activism in a way that can like bring some help to my country.
Great. Activism change. Gabby?
The good ones.
No pressure.
I would say for me, I guess try to be more the community, I guess, like build a community, but also like get into other communities as well.
Building that sense of community, continuing that forward after having this sense of community as part of this studio process. Beautiful. You will change the world. I believe in that. Thank you all so much.